The impact of the monsoon floods on the lives and livelihoods of millions of people in Pakistan, especially children, women and the elderly, has been devastating and unprecedented. According to the UN, the floods have affected some 33 million people, about 14% of Pakistan's population, causing death, damage, displacement and loss whose effects will be felt for months and years to come. More than 1,000 people have been killed, and many more are at risk of diseases such as cholera, malaria and dengue fever. The floods have also destroyed vital infrastructure, such as roads, bridges, schools, health facilities and power lines, hampering relief efforts and access to basic services. Pakistan's planning minister says estimates suggest the floods have caused at least $10 billion of damage, and many people face serious food shortages after almost half the country's crops were washed away. The floods have also displaced millions of people from their homes, forcing them to seek shelter in makeshift camps or with relatives and friends. Many of these people have lost everything they owned and are in urgent need of food, water, sanitation, health care and protection. The floods have also exposed the vulnerability of Pakistan to the effects of climate change. Pakistan contributes less than 1% of the global greenhouse gases that warm our planet, but its geography makes it extremely vulnerable to climate change. The country is located at a place on the globe which bears the brunt of two major weather systems. One can cause high temperatures and drought, like the heat wave in March, and the other brings monsoon rains. The science linking climate change and more intense monsoons is quite simple. Global warming is making air and sea temperatures rise, leading to more evaporation. Warmer air can hold more moisture, making monsoon rainfall more intense. Pakistan also has something else making it susceptible to climate change effects: its immense glaciers. The northern region is sometimes referred to as part of the third pole. It contains more glacial ice than anywhere in the world outside of the polar regions. As the world warms, glacial ice is melting. Glaciers in Pakistan's Gilgit-Baltistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa regions are melting rapidly, creating more than 3,000 lakes. Around 33 of these are at risk of sudden bursting, which could unleash millions of cubic meters of water and debris, putting 7 million people at risk. This phenomenon is known as glacial lake outburst floods, GLOFs, and has already damaged infrastructure and livelihoods in some areas. The floods in Pakistan are a wake-up call to the world on the threats of climate change. Experts have said that the record-breaking rain would devastate any country, not just poorer nations. The floods have also highlighted the need for more investment in disaster risk reduction and adaptation measures, such as early warning systems, protective infrastructure, resilient agriculture and social protection schemes. The people of Pakistan deserve solidarity and support from the international community to cope with this humanitarian crisis and to build back better for a more sustainable future. The monsoon floods that have ravaged Pakistan since June 2022 have left a trail of death and destruction across the country. More than 1,500 people have died, including over 300 children, and more than 33 million people have been affected by the floods. The floods have also damaged or destroyed over 1 million homes, washed away bridges and roads, and submerged vast areas of farmland. The flood-affected population is facing urgent needs and challenges that require immediate and sustained humanitarian assistance. Some of the most pressing issues are food insecurity. The floods have destroyed crops and livestock, disrupting the livelihoods of millions of farmers and rural communities. Many people have lost their sources of income and food, and are struggling to feed themselves and their families. According to the World Food Programme, more than 10 million people are in need of food assistance in Pakistan. Malnutrition, the lack of food and clean water, coupled with poor sanitation and hygiene conditions, has increased the risk of malnutrition among children and pregnant and lactating women. Malnutrition can lead to stunting, wasting, and increased susceptibility to infections and diseases. According to UNICEF, more than 2.5 million children under 5 are at risk of acute malnutrition in Pakistan. Waterborne diseases, the floods have contaminated water sources and disrupted water supply systems, exposing millions of people to unsafe drinking water. This can cause waterborne diseases such as diarrhea, cholera, typhoid, and hepatitis. According to the World Health Organization, more than 6 million people are in need of health assistance in Pakistan, and more than 300,000 cases of acute diarrhea have been reported since June. Lack of shelter. The floods have left many people homeless or displaced, forcing them to live in makeshift camps or overcrowded shelters. These conditions expose them to harsh weather, insects, snakes, and other hazards. They also lack privacy, dignity, and security. According to the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, more than 4 million people are in need of shelter assistance in Pakistan. Sanitation and health services. The floods have damaged or destroyed sanitation facilities and health infrastructure, affecting the availability and quality of these essential services. Many people lack access to toilets, showers, soap, and menstrual hygiene products, increasing the risk of infections and diseases. Many health facilities are also overwhelmed or inaccessible, limiting the access to health care for the flood-affected population. According to OCHA, more than 5 million people are in need of water, sanitation and hygiene assistance in Pakistan. The flood-affected population is also facing the risks of further displacement, violence and exploitation due to the floods. Some of these risks are: further displacement. The floods have displaced millions of people from their homes and communities, disrupting their social networks and support systems. Many people have moved to safer areas or urban centers, where they face challenges such as finding accommodation, employment, education, and health care. Some people may also be forced to move again due to ongoing or recurrent flooding, landslides, or other hazards. Violence. The floods have increased the vulnerability of women, children, elderly, disabled, and marginalized groups to various forms of violence such as domestic violence, sexual violence, child marriage, trafficking, and exploitation. The lack of security, protection, and justice mechanisms in the flood-affected areas can exacerbate these risks. Exploitation. The floods have increased the poverty and desperation of many people who have lost their livelihoods and assets. This can make them susceptible to exploitation by unscrupulous actors who may offer them loans with high interest rates or unfair terms, force them into bonded labor or slavery, or recruit them into armed groups or criminal activities. The monsoon floods in Pakistan are a humanitarian crisis that requires urgent attention and action from the national authorities, the international community, and the civil society. The flood-affected population needs immediate relief as well as long-term recovery support to rebuild their lives and resilience.